welcome to episode number 12 of Yucaipa 360. In early January of this year, Yucaipa, along with much of the state of California, experienced widespread power outages spanning several days in relation to a strong wind event. These outages were not caused by downed power lines or planned rolling blackouts due to high demand. Rather, Southern California Edison, or SCE, intentionally switched off the power to many circuits in the area as part of a program known as Public Safety Power Shutoffs, or PSPS. The PSPS approach is designed to prevent the start of fires caused by electrical infrastructure in windy conditions. The January PSP event was among the largest in recent memory, resulting in long power outages. Naturally, this caused a tremendous amount of concern in the community and raised questions about PSPS, the execution of the shutoffs by SCE, and the city's ability to effectively respond to such events in the future. In this episode, we will delve into the reasoning behind public safety power shutoffs, what SCE is doing to reduce the frequency and duration of future PSPS events, what the city is doing to help the community withstand future events, and what residents can do to be better prepared. To help us dive into this topic today, we are joined by Jeff Monford of Southern California Edison. Jeff, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Nice to be here, Chris.
Oh. Jeff, what exactly is it that you do for Edison?
I'm part of the team of people who work in corporate communications. We strive to inform the public about important news they need to know about the delivery of power here in Southern California.
Fantastic. And I'm sure that is a big job, especially lately.
It's been pretty busy.
Yeah. Well, the power shutoffs that occurred here in early January were inconvenient and for some people pretty scary, for a lot of our residents and businesses, actually. So I'm sure this has been an incredibly stressful and challenging time for you and your colleagues at SCE.
Well, I have a small objection to the word inconvenient. It's too nice. We have been saying and owning the fact that any outage is a hardship. Mm-hmm. And that has been especially the case this winter so far during the Santa Ana wind season, which brings extremely dry air from the Great Basin, which is the region between pretty much the Rocky Mountains and California. So it's all the great American desert, and the air comes through the passes and over the mountains in a very turbulent way. It's extremely dry air, and it's been meeting really dry conditions here in California.
Mm. Well, let's talk first about what public safety power shutoffs are so that everyone understands what we're talking about here. The idea for PSPS originated actually in San Diego around 2008 when San Diego Gas and Electric asked the California Public Utility Commission for permission to conduct a fire prevention shutoff. How did that come about? How was this idea born?
Well, what I can tell you is how we use this tool today. And here in the Southern California Edison service territory, we look at extremely local conditions in making decisions about areas that need a public safety power shutoff. So we take into account how dry vegetation is on the ground. How flammable could it be? Is there any humidity in the air right now? What are the prevailing winds? What are the likely wind gusts in a particular location? And we have hundreds of weather stations and cameras positioned especially in what we consider, in what the state has defined as the high fire risk areas. The hazard we're trying to reduce, that we're mitigating against, is the hazard of wind-blown debris becoming airborne and striking a power line, or wind being so strong that power lines themselves could be damaged. So both of those represent a hazard that we want to reduce.
So in 2017, in October, I think it was of 2017, we had those big Northern California wildfires. In the following year, 2018, we had the Camp Fire up in Butte County. Not long, and those were massive fires with tremendous devastation, lives lost, houses destroyed, entire neighborhoods destroyed.
Yes.
And I think that was a big wake-up call in the state. It was not long after that, in October or November of 2019, when PSPS as a concept became, a thing here in Southern California. I was, in 2019, managing the city of Canyon Lake. I'll never forget the call I got from Jeremy Goldman, who was the government relations manager at that time in
Know him well.
Riverside County.
Great guy.
Jeremy and I had worked together many years ago before he was at Edison. And he was explaining to me, about public safety power shutoffs, explaining this concept. And I thought I heard him wrong. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I thought, wait a minute, you're telling me that Edison's going to intentionally shut the power off? What? That can't be right, right? But it was. And shortly after that, we started seeing the rollout of this program in Southern California. But PSPS events in Yucaipa up until recently really haven't been a big thing. I mean, we've received notifications. We've maybe had brief shutoffs, of certain circuits, but nothing widespread, and certainly nothing that lasted days, right?
Yeah, and then came 2025.
Yes, then came January of 2025. It seems that PSPS events are more common now. And why was this last one so much longer than what we've experienced before?
We're talking about a tool that we use in response to local conditions and weather. And we are living in a time when weather patterns continue to change. And we had one strong Santa Ana, very dry wind event after the other. The strongest one was the first week of January 7. That was the strongest of the three in a row that we sort of organized ourselves around these three. And it was unusual to have those wind events back to back and so strong. And this created new experiences for many people here in Southern California.
Yes.
In the recent past, people who lived in canyons and on mountaintops and mountainsides were a little more accustomed to public safety power shutoffs. These brought that phenomenon down into flatter areas. More sort of grid-oriented suburban situations were included in ways that people never experienced before this year. And it was new to them, new to thousands upon thousands of SCE customers who weren't accustomed to this possibility. And that's because of the weather phenomena we experienced here in Southern California this year. These really dry, windy periods followed a hot and dry summer, which itself followed a couple of beautiful, rainy, snowy, wet winters that made everything seem like it was ordered by the City of Yucaipa Chamber of Commerce to draw happy people to the area, and everything was green and gorgeous. And then the heat comes in the summer and dries it up. Mm-hmm. And it was relentlessly hot. The last couple of summers, especially this last one, we had longer periods of very hot days drying out the vegetation. So far this year, we've had very little rain. And ordinarily, we count on winter rain to moisten the vegetation on the ground. Even though it may not be growing season, it's still going to keep it from being quite so dry and makes it less of an ideal fuel for fire. Mm-hmm. So we've got super dry vegetation. We had the high winds and we had low humidity. All of that coming together led us at Southern California Edison to use this tool of public safety power shutoffs more broadly than we have in recent memory. And the reason is because we won't compromise on safety. If there's something we can do to reduce a risk, we want to do it.
So, Yucaipa is not, we've never been immune to power outages. We've had power outages in the past. We're certainly no stranger to natural disasters. We live in a region prone to earthquakes and fires and floods and strong wind events. Just since I've been here in the past 2 years, we've had a declared local emergency. In fact, in the past 4.5 years alone, we've had 2 officially declared local emergencies here in Yucaipa. In the fall of 2020, there was the El Dorado fire, which was started by that notorious gender reveal incident. In August of 2023, we had Tropical Storm Hillary, which caused quite a bit of damage here in Yucaipa. So over the years, certain areas of the city have lost power due to downed infrastructure, caused by these type of events, or by traffic collisions, taking out power poles or electrical boxes. But these outages have been relatively short, with most lasting really under an hour. Similarly, for a period of a few years in California, we had rolling blackouts, right? Following deregulation in the 90s, the energy industry, there was a reduction in power generation and a shortage of supply. The ISO, which manages the power grid, began ordering rolling blackouts throughout the state. But we really haven't experienced that, since 2000. I don't know, when did those stop?
Well,
2020?
we
timeframe?
haven't had rotating outages in the state of California since August of 2020,
Right.
despite record-breaking summer heat,
Yeah.
which is the time when everybody has to use the air conditioning to survive. And the reason we haven't had to, the independent system operator hasn't imposed rotating outages is because of the addition of battery storage throughout the state.
Right.
State itself has added batteries, and the utility companies in California have added large-scale, utility-scale battery storage systems. So those are the reason why we have had, major reason why we haven't had to use the tool of rotating outages to make sure that the demand does not outstrip the supply.
Right.
That said, we also have, for example, kept in Northern California the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant going. It supplies necessary power and helps feed the grid. So between that and also we have some purchase agreements with states surrounding California, all of that comes together to ensure that we've had enough supply to handle the summer heat.
Well, I remember, when we did start having those rolling outages, it was quite a shock to the system, right? It was,
Yeah,
residents
course.
really, in fact, it was probably the primary reason Governor Gray Davis was recalled in 2003, right? It was shocking and not acceptable to most of the residents of the state of California to be in a situation where we just don't have power and the power was shut off intentionally. Now, in that case, it was because of a lack of supply, right? And a lot of those issues have been addressed.
Yeah.
So in Yucaipa, again, other than some PSPS notifications, maybe very brief shutoffs here or there, we had never experienced anything like, an intentional shutoff that we experienced in early January. And as you can imagine, it was alarming to a lot of our residents. But so let's dive into that January event. So it was a time when we were experiencing an extreme wind event. We were under a red flag warning, which means we were at increased risk of fire danger. How was the decision made to initiate a PSPS? I mean, as you mentioned, we've had Santa Ana winds in the past. Having windy conditions here is nothing new. What was different? Was it really just a perfect storm, if you will, of extra dry conditions and low humidity levels, and we hadn't had much rain, so we had a lot of fuel, and just all of those things converged, and we had an event like we've never had before. What was different about this time, and ultimately, whose decision was it? Who gets to make the decision that we're going to initiate a PSPS and shut off the power?
Well, to answer your first question, yes, those factors are the reason that SCE initiated Public Safety Power Shutoffs. We did that because the conditions demanded it. We look at where is this tool needed to reduce risk, to improve safety. And it has been unusual for the fuel to be as dry, for there to have been no rain in October, November, December, nothing measurable, if any at all. Very little fog even that the fuel in the ground can absorb. And then we have the strong push from east to west, bringing really dry air combined with the fuel. You add the winds. And, when the winds come over the mountains, they're turbulent. And they come, we experience that. It feels like it's blowing from left to right and front to back and sometimes all at once, and then it changes quickly. Well, that's a phenomenon of how the wind moves across the land. And I happen to live in the desert near Palm Springs, and there's a big San Gorgonio Pass there,
Yes.
which is a funnel, and you go through that, and you really feel the wind against the car, for example. And it's why the wind turbines are there, because it's generally windy, and it's especially so when the Santa Ana winds are blowing. So we had several, as you put it, perfect storms in a row. The first was the strongest, and in fact, we had significant damage to power lines from the winds. The power grid is built to withstand wind. However, it was really windier than usual, and the power grid components suffered damage. So that is a hazard in itself. We want to make sure that the lines are de-energized in such a way that if we anticipate the fact that debris could blow and become up in the air, become airborne and strike a line, we're looking for places where that might happen. And we've got about 1,700 weather stations. In addition, we have live field observers and a staff of full-time meteorologists and fire scientists who work together with the grid operators to make decisions. Where are the conditions? Where very specifically are the conditions right where a public safety power shutoff is needed? And this year we had them happen in more places. I'm going to just say more places than ever, because to me it is more places than ever. I've been here 5 years and I certainly haven't seen anything like this before, and would like not to have a repeat.
Right.
It's really such a hardship on customers. Now, we do have a very specific protocol we follow. There are thresholds set for specific locations. We can tolerate more windy conditions in the desert than we can west of the San Gorgonio Pass. In the desert, we have less vegetation, less fuel on the ground, and you can see the difference. There's more chaparral here. Even here we're at City Hall, surrounding City Hall, are beautiful dry grasses everywhere you look.
Yeah.
And they're really dry. So we take those very local conditions into account. For the last several years, since 2019 or so, SCE crews have been adding a lot of switches to the grid so we can manage the grid in ever smaller portions, and adding cameras so we can look at a smaller area and see how's the fuel, what's the relative humidity, what's the wind speed, what's it forecast to be, what is the range of wind speeds that we could encounter. Now, that's weather forecasting, and we know it's not if it were weather guaranteeing, it would have a different name.
Right.
But we look at the range of possibilities. And those experts who work full-time for the company all work together to determine where we need to impose a public safety power shutoff.
Okay, interesting. A lot of people reached out to City Hall during this time. And by the way, our power is out here at City Hall, and that exposed a weakness of our system that we need to address, right? But our staff was here, and we were working off of, those of us who have laptops, those still worked, and using phones as hotspots to get emails. And we received, a lot of questions about, why did the city agree to this? The city council needs to turn the power back on, or the sheriff's department needs to turn the power back on. Clearly, that's not the way it works. But internally at SCE, so you have these teams of, that include meteorologists. You have people looking at the weather conditions and at a very microscopic and location specific way. But at some point, I'm sure there must be somewhere along the chain of command where somebody makes that decision. Where does that decision lie?
Well, what I can tell you based on my knowledge, I've mentioned I've been here 5 years. Everyone says, "Oh, you're new," and I hear that frequently.
Yeah.
A lot of us anybody less than 10 is considered to be just having arrived. There is a team of people who come together. We have computer modeling, we have the experts, we have joint decision making, and our bias is toward safety. We don't compromise on it, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to enhance safety for customers, crews, and communities. So if we have to shut off the power for a public safety power shutoff, we make every attempt to reduce the number of customers affected and to reduce the length of the outage, and we try to turn power on as safe as it's to do so. This year was different. We had sustained winds of day after day, so the conditions did not allow us to kind of return to normal and turn the power back on. In addition, after every shutoff, we have to inspect the lines to make sure there's no debris caught in them, to make sure there's no damage. And with that in mind, you got to look at the lines during daylight. So we might have a shutoff on a Tuesday at 10 a.m., and the conditions get better by 5 o'clock. Well, in the winter, it's dark. and we have to go until the next day before we can see the lines well enough to inspect them. Now, not far away in the mountain communities, they were having similar schedule of public safety power shutoff notifications and shutoffs and line damage, and we couldn't fly the helicopter to go up and look at the line because the pilot wasn't given a flight permit because there was too much wind. But it wasn't windy on the ground, and I wanted to mention that. The people in the communities were calling the media and us and saying, it's not windy at my house.
We got that a lot. In fact, you sent over a graphic that shows that. Let's put that up here. This is a great graphic. Maybe walk us through this.
So why does my neighbor have power and I don't? Or why does my neighboring town have power and I don't? Or it's not windy where I am. Why am I having to endure this?
Right.
The point of this graphic is that wires travel long distances. The circuits are lengthy. And if PSPS conditions, public safety power shutoff conditions, exist at one point along a circuit, we have to turn off the entire thing. Now, we have been making the circuits shorter and shorter by adding those switches I mentioned. That work is ongoing. We're going to keep going with that, as well as adding weather stations and cameras and that kind of thing. So things will be getting better. But the idea here is, if the wires originate in a windy area with a high fire risk, that can affect the entire length of the circuit. We don't have to go far here in Southern California. You can turn your head and just look to the north generally, and you're going to see the high fire risk area uphill. And when the wires are involved in that area, that can affect the cause a public safety power shutoff to be necessary for the entire length of the circuit. So we are breaking the circuits down. That work will continue, and we hope it will reduce public safety power shutoffs.
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah, that was a comment we got a lot, and I think a lot of people don't understand how the circuits work, and that you might be on a circuit. You may have someone across the street from you who's on a different circuit, and their power might be on and yours might be off, and that might annoy you. We got those comments quite a bit as well.
I recognize, and my colleagues and I all feel this way. This is not an inconvenience. I was in a communications consultation meeting, and I was all happy about it because I like improving the words that are being used, and small amount of power crews, and I was in this meeting, and we had the automatic message that said, "We're sorry for the inconvenience." And I went, strike that word. This is a hardship. Let's just own it. And even, 20 minutes is okay. By the time you get to an hour and more, it's a hardship. And we recognize that, and we want the customers to know that we know we're talking about a hardship.
Well, you're right. I think for some it's an inconvenience, and for others it really is a hardship. I mean, if you if the power's out for days and all of your food goes bad, that's a hardship. If it's cold outside and you can't get heat to your house, and that could be a real hardship. If you run a business and you have a freezer full of food and that all goes bad, well, that could be a huge price tag to your business associated with that. So that's definitely a hardship.
It certainly is, and it has employment effects. My sister is a grocery executive, and their stores were affected by public safety power shutoffs, and they certainly had spoilage, and people couldn't come to work to provide for their families. So we recognize and we take it very seriously, and it's why we have a number of mitigations that have been going on that are going to continue. And I mentioned the addition of switches. In some places, it makes sense to put the power lines underground. We call it targeted undergrounding, and it is in fact very targeted. Undergrounding is extremely expensive. Add zeros after to the cost of building above ground infrastructure. But we use targeted undergrounding highly intentionally to reduce wildfire risk. It has the handy side effect of reducing the need for public safety power shutoffs to a degree. But let's say I was visiting with some customers up in the high desert, and they said, we had road closures and you came through and put in covered conductor and more switches and more sensors and rapid acting fuses and things, and we're still having public safety power shutoffs. And I said, yes, but not until the wind is stronger. So what happens is that our interventions, the wildfire mitigation work, covered conductor, fast-acting switches, more sensors, more switches, and all of that allows us to raise the wind threshold, but it doesn't eliminate it. So that's one of the tools. In addition to that grid hardening work, we have the occasional use of undergrounding the power lines. And we have some of that planned here in Yucaipa. Happy to say that the Stonewood circuit that feeds City Hall and the police department is slated for undergrounding. So you'll enjoy streets being dug up. And we'll have to get permits, and it takes some time, and not everybody cooperates, but we hope they will. There's also a circuit called the Poultry Circuit that runs uphill from the town, and these circuits will be partially undergrounded. And that's because that's the most effective way to reduce wildfire risk. And we have to make sure that we can justify the cost of what we're spending. Building the grid is paid for through utility rates. Shows up on the bill, and we are very conscious of the fact that electricity bills are higher than they have been in the past. They will return to the long pattern is the utility rates have lagged behind inflation, and they're going to do that again within a couple of years. But for now, they have been a bit ahead. And we recognize that that's difficult for customers to afford. So I remember when I was brand new, we were in a company town hall meeting, and I bravely raised my hand and asked a question of the CEO, why don't we just underground everything? And it comes back to cost.
Sure.
And feasibility. We have a lot of really rocky terrain, and you can't just use a regular, digger to make a trench. We have to have pneumatic drilling, and in some cases blasting, and all of that costs a lot. And it's one of the reasons why undergrounding is so expensive and takes a long time. So those are some reasons why it's not everywhere. But we are looking forward to doing the work on those couple of circuits here in Yucaipa. So next time, we hope that there's a public safety power shutoff. Maybe that undergrounding will help keep power on at City Hall and the police department.
That would be helpful. Yeah. I think residents expect their local government to be up and running, especially in a time of hardship or disaster, which I'm not sure that this rose to the level of disaster, but it certainly was a challenging time.
Absolutely.
Let's get back to the January event from this year. And I'm gonna ask some hard things here.
Okay.
There were issues and concerns about the way SE handled the event. And don't worry, I'm going to bring up criticisms of how the city handled it as well in a minute. So this goes both ways. It seems that not much notice was given ahead of the shutoffs this time. Notice to the residents or notices to the local governments. The communication to local governments was not timely or accurate, really. Our public safety manager, Trevor Benson, is very proactive with these things, and he was reaching out, and the government affairs manager who covers Yucaipa, Eileen Flores, she's fantastic. We have a great working relationship for her. Really appreciate her, but it was very hard to get in touch with her, and our assumption was everyone was experiencing the same thing all at once, and you guys must have just been completely inundated, right? But it was frustrating for cities. Our job is to communicate with residents to make sure we're doing what we need to do to be prepared and to help our residents, and that was made difficult. The outage maps on SE's website were not accurate as to which circuits had been de-energized, and then later which ones had been re-energized. And then, so in Yucaipa, this event really hit early in the morning on Wednesday, the 8th of January. By that Friday, most of the circuits had been re-energized. Sunday, the January the 12th, there was a Teams call that Edison put together, and it was, all of the cities in Southern California were invited to participate. And SE's president, Steve Powell, was on the call. And let me give credit where it's due. First of all, I was very surprised at how open the discussion was allowed to be. People were allowed to unmute their microphones and ask questions, and boy, did they! Right?
Yeah. Good.
But I mean, really, it was cities all throughout California experiencing the same frustrations. Really, letting the President Powell have it. And in a way, it kind of made us feel good that at least it wasn't just us.
Yes.
Right.
Small comfort.
But clearly, clearly there are some things that need to be corrected in how these events are approached, particularly as it pertains to communications. And again, our assumption has been that this event came quickly and was a more widespread event than had happened in the past. And whether it was the communication systems or the number of personnel, maybe everything was just overwhelmed.
Well, you've given me my answer, and it is yes, that, and all of the above and more.
Okay.
So the weather patterns affected more communities than we have seen in recent memory. And the demand on the system that runs the outage map, which I've been promoting for 5 years and teaching reporters how to use it, and real excited about myself and my skills in teaching the map. Well, the map, it couldn't keep up with the hits to the website. And the map is not a false construct that someone drives. It is tied to the very system wherein the decisions are made. So the map couldn't keep up with the rapid changes in the system that is being used to regulate the power being on and off and so on. We prioritize the operational side, not the communication side, as a matter of we had to. And I'm glad to know, I was aware that Steve has been saying our communications were not sufficient and timely enough and taking responsibility, and I will echo that. As a company, we do take responsibility for the fact that the communications were insufficient and not timely enough. And we were all overly stretched. So we are putting in place plans for the future where those needs will be better met. And we recognize that it's a failing this time around, and it's not okay with us. So this time, though, the map usually shows all kinds of outages. And we just turned off the outages for repair, car hit pole, turned off some of the ones for wind damage as well, and turned off the showing of planned maintenance for several days, just so that customers could see the public safety power shutoffs only. And of course, a reporter called me and I couldn't answer them about why the power was out in their town using the map. I had to call some people. We can't get information on the map. Yeah, we've turned the map over to public safety power shutoffs because that's affecting the greatest number of people, so it's our priority. Mm-hmm. So we are looking at ways to improve systems and improve staffing and training where necessary and that kind of thing so that we can do a better job. I can tell you how it's supposed to work. We're supposed to give customers 48 hours notice whether they are in scope for a public safety power shutoff. That notification will reach the customer how they've signed up for it. So this is a pitch. Everyone, please go on your account on sce.com and number one, sign up for notifications. I was signed up only for emails, so I went in and added text messages as well. Not fun to get them in the middle of the night. I would rather know than not. And they're saying you're in scope for a public safety power shutoff, or your power is off, and we know your power is off. Don't have to tell us, and so on. Later, we often will send them, the power has been restored. We want people to be aware of what's going on, so in case they have left their residence or business, they know that they could return to it and look after things. In the meetings I've attended, we've been promised that all those systems are being improved. So it's supposed to be the 48-hour notice, the one-day notice. We're supposed to be talking to the cities and the county leaders and notifying everyone as much in advance as we can. And so I think what's happened here in the past is people got those notifications and then there was not a shutoff. Good. Let's hope that happens in the future. I would prefer to notify and not shut off as opposed to notifying and then having to go all the way through. Because once we turn one of them off, it has to be inspected. And we can't do that promptly always. And most of the time, it has to be done during the day. Right. So that's often a truck with a couple of crew members using binoculars. If they can't do that, we have to take to the air. And then this year, we were delayed in doing that because conditions didn't allow for flights. So it was pretty much everything all at once. And then that repeated 3 weeks in a row. the inspection information was news to lots of people. They didn't realize that, yeah, well, the wind is gone now and everything is fine, but we still have to go check everything before we can take a chance and turn it back on.
Right.
So that's something that we've been communicating a lot about, and I hope it's been somewhat helpful to know that, yes, we know it's over, but
Right.
can't get the bird in the air, and therefore we can't see the line, and also we have to wait till the sun is shining enough to perceive it.
Well, it was, in many ways an unprecedented event. It was certainly unprecedented for us here in Yucaipa. And the city was not free from legitimate criticism either. So it caused, when something like this happens, it causes everyone to take a look at what systems are in place and what needs to be improved. I'd like to touch on some of the things we heard from our residents, because I'm sure some of the people watching and listening to this episode would want to know the answers to these questions. Probably the biggest question and criticism we got was that we had a lot of intersections where our stop signs were inoperable. Now, our stop signs have battery backup. Our stoplights have battery backup, and depending on the age of that particular light system, that those batteries might last anywhere from 4 hours to 10 hours, right? So in the past, it hasn't been an issue when we've had power outages of 30 minutes, a couple hours. Those intersections, the lights at those intersections maintain power. But, when the outage is days, eventually those batteries are going to run out. And at night, now you have intersections that are not lit. And in Yucaipa, we have a longstanding policy that we do not go out and place temporary stop signs. And that became controversial. Some communities do put out temporary stop signs. But the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, puts out a document called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices for Streets and Highways. And in that guidance, it's very clear the guidance is not to put out the temporary stop signs. There are many examples of why that is the case. The one that we've been giving, the one that I think is probably the easiest to understand, is the scenario where, let's say, you've got an intersection that's gone out, the lights have gone out, so you put up a temporary stop sign, and then all of a sudden, when the power comes back on, now you've got an operating signal and you've got a stop sign. So, a vehicle approaches that intersection and sees the stop sign, so they stop. The vehicle behind them approaches the intersection. They see the green light. They don't see the stop sign. They keep going, and you've got an issue, right? And with some of our systems, our lights, the newer ones, those can be programmed so that when there's an outage and then when the traffic is the signal's re-energized, it defaults to a flashing red. Mm-hmm. Would solve that problem. But we have 35, 36 signalized intersections in the city, and a lot of those were installed starting in the 80s, and they don't have that technology. When the power comes back on, they just start cycling.
They go back into the idea that it's, red, yellow, green.
Right. And it would be impossible to get, enough public works people out to every single intersection instantly as soon as that power came back on to switch those over. So it does present a safety issue. It is actually much more dangerous to set out those temporary stop signs than not, but it's a little counterintuitive for a lot of people, right? In fact, we have a short video. The following Monday, after all this happened, we had a city council meeting, and our captain of our police station here addressed that issue, Captain Walker. So let's play that.
If you don't know, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices defines standards used by road managers nationwide to install and maintain traffic control devices on all streets and highways open to public travel. But in this manual, it cautions against the use of temporary stop signs during power outages, specifically stating that if we cannot ensure that a traffic signal will be on flashing red upon the restoration of power, that a temporary stop sign shall not be used. Per the manual, there was a host of issues that we thought were valid that we needed to bring up as we had these discussions. So again, it wasn't taken lightly. There was a lot of communication about whether or not to do it. And in the video, the city manager gave the example of a motorist approaching an intersection where the signal where the power had been restored and the signal was now cycling like it should, and a temporary stop sign not being timely removed from that intersection, and how that could cause confusion and potentially accidents in that same intersection. So after consulting with our partners, and we realized that we could not ensure that the signals would perform that way, that they would go to flashing red upon the restoration of power. And it should be noted that when the power was eventually restored on Friday afternoon to most of our intersections, we saw that many of our signals did in fact go back to that regular cycling. They didn't go back to the red flash. So kind of validated what we were thinking, and that we could not ensure that they would go back to that flashing red.
So we also received some complaints that we had too much traffic enforcement during this time. We did staff up. We had extra deputies on patrol, and people thought, well, this is, you shouldn't pick on people at a time of disaster like this, but, we thought it was important to have extra deputies out there. On the flip side, we had some residents say there wasn't enough and that we should staff up even more and have deputies on every intersection, which clearly wouldn't be feasible. But, we had elderly residents without heat. We had residents and businesses with food going bad, and residents with medical devices that require power. And, we heard all of these comments. And I think one of the important things for people to understand is that there is a certain amount of self-preparation that's required here. I mean, the city is not FEMA, right? We're not the Red Cross. We are not designed or equipped to feed every resident, whose food goes bad. But we are taking steps. We are taking steps to be even better prepared for the next event. As far as our intersections go, we have ordered this reflective material that goes around each light that makes them much more visible at night when a vehicle approaches that intersection. At least that reflective material will pop out and glow, so you can see the intersection better. We applied for a grant for that, actually. So we're hoping that within 45 days or so that those will actually be installed. We're stepping up our preparations for better public education. We think it's important that people understand that when you approach an intersection with an inoperable light, that the vehicle code is very clear that you are to treat that intersection as a four-way stop. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of our residents didn't know that, and they were confused about what to do when they reached an intersection that was dark. We're increasing our patrols, so we're prepared to do even more to increase our patrols during those types of events. We're making sure that we have generators available at city facilities that lose power. That's in the works. The City Hall will be better prepared in the future, as well as our other facilities. During the outage, Edison did set up community care and resource centers in certain areas. During the first event, there was one not in Yucaipa but close to us in Mentone at the library there. So I think the second time around, we had one located here in the city of Yucaipa, and so we'd like to work with SE to make sure that in future events that is something that happens.
Were those in the building, or were they a community crew vehicle, a little yellow van?
Both.
Okay.
So a vehicle came out, but for example, when that vehicle arrived at our community center, which we offered up here, we were able to actually use the building, so that crew was able to go inside the building, which was nice.
Yeah, those are meant to have a place for people to get information, to charge their devices, get maybe a bottle of water and a granola bar.
Yes. Yeah, and that's very helpful. So we want to make sure, whether it's an SCE center or whether it's the city opening one of our facilities that has energy for device charging and snacks and coffee, et cetera, that's available inside the city of Yucaipa. We also are going to be working with our local churches for them to provide, with our support, warming centers if it's a time when it's very cold, or cooling centers if it's a time of extreme heat. And then we just need to be ready to push out information as soon as possible, as soon as a PSPS event is noticed, and we working with you guys at SCE to make sure that information is available to our residents as soon as possible. Well,
we really welcome your partnership in all of those things, and we need it in order to be able to reach customers in the way that we want. There are a lot of things customers can do. anyone can do to be prepared for the possibility of losing power. Non-perishable food is the first thing that comes to mind. Drinking water as well. I personally hate having water in plastic, but I've got a supply of it because that's what responsible people do to prepare for emergencies. So that's there. The other thing is, I mentioned earlier, go on sce.com and sign up for notifications. I vote for both email and text. Help your neighbors do that. Not everyone is capable of dealing with the online world.
Yeah.
And it would be really a good thing to help people you know who you think may not be able to do that sign up on their own, to give them a hand so they do that.
Yeah.
Nearly everybody's got a mobile phone. However, they may not all be comfortable with transactions on websites. So that would be a thing that people could do to support each other. In addition, we want everyone to be ready with a go bag, essential documents, I know at my house, there are 2 laptops and 2 phones and a cat. I also know where the passport is, and I'm ready I can move very quickly to get all of that together and out the door if I have to evacuate. We certainly want everyone to obey every evacuation order they get. This is not the time to wonder if you really have to. Figure that out afterwards. So preparation is important, especially for people who have a power-dependent medical device. Go on sce.com and register as somebody in our medical baseline programs. The name is not necessarily super comprehensible, but we want to know who has a power-dependent medical device. In some cases, this time with the Public Safety Power Shutoffs, we had crew members knocking on doors because we knew people were highly likely to have no power and that they had registered for one of those. That also helps us when we are planning, if we ever have to do a rotating outage for power shortage reasons. I'm hoping that never happens ever again in the entire future forever. But we've added so much more energy storage, and we're adding generation capacity in the state, and we've done very well the state has done very well to meet the demand for power. But nevertheless, we want that information is used in helping determine the order of rotating outages. So the more medical baseline customers we have on a circuit, that circuit is given a different priority rating and may have less often an outage in a situation where the utilities are ordered to reduce power use. Again, not likely to happen, but still something that we want people to be aware of, and they can sign up for, notify us with that information, and that's just a good thing to do. So here at SCE, we make every attempt to alert customers in advance. This year, our systems didn't work well enough, but we're working to improve them. Bear in mind, it's a weather forecast, not a weather guarantee. And sometimes it changes quickly, and we can't always give the kind of notifications we want.
Right. So just to kind of recap, I think this is very important. First of all, we really need residents. Yucaipa is, as we mentioned before, we live in an area that's beautiful, but we know that we're prone to earthquakes, to fires, to floods, to strong wind events. So it's really important that residents here take steps to be prepared, right? As far as power outages go, we really need people to make sure that they have enough food and water to last at least 72 hours. Have backup water and food available. If you have the ability to have backup power, whether that's a generator, whether that's a solar panels with batteries, whatever it is, a portable battery that you can charge up and draw power from, whatever it is, that's going to be hugely helpful. And it's all the more important if you rely on medical devices that need power. That's very, very important. Also, signing up for notifications, as you mentioned, very important. So the San Bernardino County Office of Emergency Services has a webpage they call Stay Informed. Let's put that up here. So a lot of things you can do here. Smart 911, the telephone emergency notification system, or TENS system. Really, everyone should be signed up for this. You'll get important notifications from the county there. You can also call 211 in San Bernardino County. You can call 211 and they will help you with whatever services you need. There really are a lot of services out there. If you're a senior in need of help, call 211. Call 211. SCE offers quite a bit of help. Let's put up the SE outage status webpage. Okay, so you can go to this website. The URL is right there. You can type in your address, and this is where you can get up-to-date information on the status of outages in your area. Right, it's really important as when you start seeing on social media or you get the notification that there might be power outages, go to this site. This site will have a lot of information for you.
It's searchable by address. You can put in your specific home or business address, your town name, your zip code. We've made it flexible with searches, and it's a big map, and it'll zoom into the area you put into the search. Right now, the map is showing a little rectangle that nobody under the age of 40 knows what that is. That's meant to be a tear-off calendar page. And it's a planned maintenance that's already on the calendar, something we're planning to do. And we will do notifications, automatic notifications for those who've signed up for them, who will be affected by that planned outage where they're going to come in and as quickly as possible make a repair and turn the power back on. So there's one of those noted there, but I'm happy to see no yellow triangles for damage that has to be fixed, and there's no public safety power shutoffs noted on the map in the area today.
Yep,
so
we're looking good today.
That's good.
Yeah, no, that is good. That is good. SCE also offers resources for people. We have incentives for portable power stations, as an example. Let's put up the SCE customer resource and support webpage here. So what are we looking at here, Jeff?
Well, you mentioned these portable power stations. You charge them in advance. They're a portable battery, and you can use them to run some appliances, some lights, and charge devices. They will not run HVAC, of course. They're not meant to supply heat. They're meant to keep you connected. And we have a financial incentive there, a rebate for people who want to buy one of those. And we also have some of that for portable generators. So I want to make a couple of safety announcements, if I may.
Please.
Portable generators are not to be connected to the electric panel. They're to be used for specific appliances and lights.
Mm-hmm.
If you connect them to the electric panel, you can, number one, cause a fire. Number two, create a situation called backfeed for when the power does come back on. You have power coming out and power coming in, hitting itself. That can harm crew members and cause problems with electrical grid equipment. So use the generator outdoors. Believe it or not, some people don't realize that gas-powered generator cannot be brought indoors. It's to be used outdoors with an extension cord to the fridge, or an extension cord or a power strip to some lights and some battery device chargers. So those are tips on using that. Everywhere we go here at Edison, we make the point that if you see a downed power line, do not touch it or anything in contact with it. Stay at least 100 feet away from it and call 911. So those are some safety messages that we never want to miss an opportunity to share.
Well, thank you. Yeah. You know, the County of San Bernardino Office of Emergency Services has a wealth of information, resources that people can access. Let's start with the extreme wind event homepage. Let's put that up here. Okay. So this is, again, County Office of Emergency Services, a lot of information here. You know, as you go through this website, there's information from the National Weather Service, from County Behavioral Health, if you need help with those services, where to find warming centers. You see, a long list of resources there for the Red Cross, food safety, services for elderly residents. So a lot of the phone calls we get from residents about, gosh, I've got an elderly neighbor, what do we do about food? A lot of that, we refer a lot of those calls to the county here, the county OES, and there really is an awful lot of help out there for people that need it. Also, we saw just a lot of neighbors helping neighbors here in Yucaipa. One of the really neat things about our community is, a really tight-knit community, and it's really kind of heartwarming to see people just reaching out and checking on each other and helping each other too.
That's so essential and necessary. Here at SCE, we are your neighbors, we're each other's, and we're affected by all the same things. And that's one of the reasons why we know that any outage is a hardship, and especially long ones in a series of them like we had. And we understand that electricity is essential and how much people depend on it. And we are doing our very best to make sure that we minimize outages whenever they do occur.
Yeah, no, that's great. Jeff, I really appreciate you being here today. This has been something that has really been on a lot of our residents' minds and business owners, and has been weighing on a lot of people. So this is terrific information. I couldn't help but notice that you and I have a Texas connection.
Well, I was born in LA, but I grew up in San Antonio and went to high school there and attended college at the University of Texas at Austin.
Very good. Yeah.
So
I grew up mostly in the Dallas area.
yeah?
A town called Carrollton.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know it. I definitely know that. I have family members in Dallas and lived there for many years myself.
Oh, is that right?
It's been forever since I lived there, but I can still drive all those freeways without a map. I know where I'm going in Dallas.
Well, some of those freeways didn't exist when I was growing up there.
Yeah.
It has grown so much.
Do you get back very often, or do you have
Every
family
couple
there?
of years? Yeah, I have the guy who was my best friend growing up still lives out there, and every couple of years we get together and go catch a Cowboys game, and catch up. So,
Well, there's no shortage of great sports opportunities there. Dallas is really a globally transformed city, and I enjoy visiting. But for me, home is Southern California, and I'm happy I get to live near Palm Springs. And
yes, yeah, it's a beautiful
this
place.
time of year, it's the right time of year to be there.
When you move from Texas to California, you trade tornadoes with earthquakes, I guess.
I think, yeah. Let's hope those don't come.
Yes, yeah.
We've had enough wind that's
Yes.
causing trouble. So
Now you have an interesting background. So your background is in public relations and marketing.
yeah, a long time ago I worked in healthcare communications, and one way I think of it as sort of my communications has gone from the health of individuals to the health of the planet. I work at Edison because the company is a leader in integrating clean energy. And I'm proud of that work, and it continues. And, every year we publish a scholarly paper that talks about one aspect of that. And our most recent one pointed out how much the grid has to expand to support the growing electrification that Southern California's economy is especially creating here. And we see all the time the need for more transmission and distribution to power the growth that we are enjoying here. And it's really exciting to get to be a part of that.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, again, thank you so much for being here. This has been a very important topic for so many in our community, and we really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about
Well,
it.
thank you for inviting me and for the chance to share some information.
Yeah, no, our pleasure. Episode number 13 will drop in 2 weeks on Tuesday, February 25th. Until then, thank you for watching and listening to Yucaipa 360.
Turns off the thrill. Street lights flicker, then they're gone. Darkened roads, the night is long. Signal silent, no one sure where to go, what's in store. Lights out in Yucaipa town. All is hushed, not a single sound. No more comfort, no more glow. Lost in night, nowhere to go. Candles flicker, shadows grow. Neighbors whisper about what they know. Turning pages of a book. Just a glimpse, just one last look. Darkened homes and empty streets. Eyes wide open, heart that beats. Seeking solace in the night. Longing for the morning. All is hushed, not a single sound. No more comfort, no more glow. Lost in night, nowhere to go. Lights out in Yucaipa town. All is hushed, not a single sound. No more comfort, no more glow. Lost in night, nowhere to go. To go. To go.